been feeling pretty nostalgic lately. And although that probably stems from the fact that I'm terrified of aging and I'm just clinging to these memories in hopes of reversing the aging process, I've been doing a deep dive over all of my D&D characters that I've ever created or played as. And what I've found is, over the years, I've pretty much played as every single modern D&D class available, and I have a yearning for more. I've been the heroic fighter, the sneaky rogue, the not sneaky rogue, an octopus, and despite what you might believe, a ranger multiple times. And yet, every now and then I find myself scratching my poorly maintained beard and asking myself, why aren't there more options? Because back in the day, there were more. Way more, in fact. Dozens of classes that probably should have never existed, and plenty more that should have been maintained into modern editions of D&D. So dust off your spellbooks, warm up your things that require warmth, and let's dive straight into it. 4th edition was a weird and forgettable time for D&D, but it did unearth a truly undervalued class need. A martial leader who could rally allies, direct attacks, or literally shout you back to your feet when you went down.
This is where we fight!
But instead of waving a holy symbol or strumming a lute, the Warlord did it with their pure command presence. Their signature ability, for example, Inspiring Word, could heal allies with motivational yelling.
That they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
That's right, no magic, just good old-fashioned get up soldier or I'll kill you myself type energy. They could do things like grant allies extra attacks or reposition them on the battlefield to turn a losing fight into a comeback through sheer coordination. Picture someone like Braveheart but with more tactically orientated military prowess.
All we need to win are the fellas in this room right now. And all you fellas need to do is believe it.
And that's just the kind of thing that D&D today doesn't really have. A true non-magical support class. Sure, bards and fighters can command people with a few maneuvers, but the Warlord's entire build was about leadership, as they were the person that makes everyone else around them better. And when playing as them, you didn't have to deal damage to feel powerful, because instead you just made the whole party pretty much unstoppable. The Shaman has been haunting D&D since its 1st edition, also existing in the 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and the 4th edition, but hasn't made its way to current D&D as of yet. And every single one of those previous editions were all built around the exact same kind of idea. A spiritual caster who communes with the unseen world instead of nature or the gods themselves.
You must be the Heibai spirit. My name is...
And it's been very consistent across every edition that the core of this class is very simple. They're not priests, and they're definitely not druids. Instead, they're the bridge between worlds and acts as a mediator between the living world and spirits. And as these mediators, they can call on their ancestors, totems, and ancient powers that predate civilization. Mechanically, the Shaman really started hitting its stride in 3rd and 4th edition as it became this version of a primal spellcaster, which pretty much allowed them to fight alongside a spirit companion which represented their bond to the spirit world. And this companion, whether it be a bear, eagle, panther, Ryan Gosling from Blade Runner 2049,
You look lonely. I can fix that.
could attack, heal, or channel spells on your behalf, making you feel like you were commanding the unseen forces of nature. And I just feel that again, is missing from modern D&D. Because druids lean into wild shape, clerics serve deities, warlocks have daddy issues, sorcerers are just naturally gifted wizards, and wizards are book nerds. And none of those connect the primal and spiritual world together. And especially for players who like role-playing or feeling very connected to their character, it's a playstyle that feels really deeply personal and doesn't really relate to any of the other ones I've just mentioned. Let's stay on the trend of talking about 4th edition and talk about one of the most overlooked divine casters that was bestowed upon us in the Invoker. The easiest way to imagine an Invoker's entire aesthetic is just imagine a cleric who's read one too many forbidden scrolls and's gone, why do I have to pick one god? I'm gonna channel all of them. The Invoker was a divine controller, which meant they specialized in shaping the battlefield with different radiant explosions, or holy chains, or other godly effects. Mechanically, they lean much more into spellcasting than paladins ever did, focusing on various range-based prayers and effects. But it was their lore and aesthetic that really made them stand out. Because unlike clerics who devote themselves to one single deity, Invokers acted as the chosen conduits of an entire pantheon of gods. They didn't just serve a god, they embodied divine will. And just like the later stages of any Hades run, when an Invoker walked into battle, it wasn't just one god answering the call, it was an entire celestial board meeting, in which no one's mics were kept on mute.
How do you manage it, oh queen? I manage it one evening at a time is how, sister.
And the aesthetic of a divine spellcaster without the church bureaucracy of a cleric or the sword and honor baggage of a paladin is still wide open.
To truly be forgiven, to be welcomed into the kingdom of God. Demon in heaven.
The Invoker gave you the feeling of being the literal mouthpiece of creation, as you hurled divine energy without having to be a healer or a tank and just punish the wicked. Because there ain't no rest for the wicked, and money don't grow on trees. I've got bills to pay and a mouth to feed. So let's do a perfectly segued ad read. Have you ever needed a hand wrangling your sprawling fantasy world, or simply needed to remember which of these now forgotten D&D classes your players were actually playing as? Then you need World Anvil, the ultimate RPG campaign manager. World Anvil gives game masters, writers, and storytellers an incredible suite of creative tools, including things like interactive maps, family trees, timelines, and automatic linking so your world feels alive. There's even a digital DM screen for D&D, Pathfinder, and over 106 different RPG systems, so who needs this? So why not build your novel, plan out your homebrew world, and manage your campaign all in one place? Join the 3 million other world builders already forging their legends at worldanvil.com. And hey, if you use the coupon code on screen right now, you get 51% off your annual subscription. And again, you can do all of that at worldanvil.com. Forge your world, wield your story. Alright, this next one still technically kind of exists. Well, sort of. In 5th edition, it got watered down significantly in the Arcane Trickster subclass of the Rogue, but in 3.5 edition, the Spellthief was so cool. It wasn't just a rogue with cantrips. Instead, it was an entire class built around the idea of stealing your enemy's magic and using it against them. Mechanically, the Spellthief was the perfect combination of a rogue and an arcane caster. You still had your sneak attack, your trap finding, and all of your other rogue-based skills, but your real party trick was your class-defining feature, Steal Spell, which allowed you, when you landed a sneak attack on a spellcaster, to snatch away one of their prepared spells right out of their mind. The wizard's fireball? Gone.
Fireball!
The sorcerer's shield? It's yours now. It's like magical identity theft, but with extra style points.
Identity theft is not a joke, Jim.
And as you leveled up, you got even trickier. You could steal ongoing spell effects, magical resistances, or spell-like abilities from monsters. It made combat feel much more like a chess match, where every turn was the opportunity to turn your opponent's power into your own advantage. And flavor-wise, the Spellthief was the ultimate magical opportunist. And they were typically perceived as a street-smart arcane hustler who didn't study for years to get their abilities or sign away their soul to an eldritch being. Instead, you just figured out a way to pickpocket from the weave itself. And yes, the Arcane Trickster scratches part of that itch, but it doesn't quite capture the full effect of what made the Spellthief so brilliant. Because the Spellthief wasn't a rogue that learned magic. They stole it, repurposed it, and threw it back. Well, not like threw it back, but let's move right along. This video could very easily be retitled Things That 4th Edition Did Right, because I'm very quickly learning it wasn't all that bad. Although it's very similar to the Paladin, the Avenger from 4th edition definitely deserves its own spotlight. This divine assassin served as a holy warrior who hunted down enemies of their faith with surgical precision. And if the Paladin is the shining knight, the Avenger is the shadow of divine wrath that follows closely behind. Mechanically, in the quirky and never used again combat roles of 4th edition, the Avenger was classified as a divine striker. Their signature feature was their Oath of Enmity, which allowed you to choose a specific target and gain advantage on all attack rolls against them. It was all about picking your mark and pursuing that relentlessly until divine justice was done. And you weren't standing in the front line holding a shield, instead you snuck through the cracks and dealt with evil discreetly. What made the Avenger so compelling was its blend of stealth and faith. You weren't bound by heavy armor or clerical hierarchy. You were a divine hitman who took on the jobs that were too dirty or dangerous for the rest of the church. Lore-wise, they often operated outside of the temple walls, serving the will of their god through sorcery, cunning, and absolute conviction. The Oath of Vengeance Paladin definitely tries to capture this same aesthetic, but it's definitely not the same, as the Avenger was faster, lighter, and didn't care at all about honor, just the end result, enacting their god's will by any means necessary. And let's be honest, it's one of the coolest class names ever. Although I don't necessarily think this kind of Avenger would have made it into the Avengers, because they're kind of f***ed up in a lot of ways. Often confused with a scion, the Ardent was a psionic philosopher warrior that channeled cosmic ideas and their own personal philosophies into psionic power. This essentially meant that they could do things like inspire allies and punish foes with the power of their mind. Mechanically, they were considered charisma-based leaders in 4th edition, which blended elements of being a wizard and cleric while keeping a psionic twist. But you weren't just casting spells, you were applying cosmic logic as a weapon. Now, before we go too deep into psionics in general, we kind of have to acknowledge the Scion class. This class has appeared in almost every single edition of D&D, and with the not too recent Unearthed Arcana mentioning Scions, it's a real chance that they make their return in this edition. So because of that, we're not going to fully dive into that class because they're not forgotten. In fact, they're kind of on the cusp of a comeback, so just wanted to acknowledge that. It's just worth noting that psionic magic, as its own detached and standalone magical framework, has always had a place in D&D, and both the Ardent and Scion fit into that. Now, back to the Ardent. Mechanically, they were all about these things called mantles as compared to psionic spellcasting, which were essentially psionic philosophies that granted a selection of abilities. And from these mantles, you had at-will powers, which allowed you to do things like psychic strikes or utility effects, encounter powers for stronger attacks or debuffs, and daily powers for larger game-changing effects. Some mantles allowed you to boost your allies with psychic inspiration, others focused on debuffing enemies, and a few allowed you to teleport or manipulate the battlefield through sheer will. Put everyone off a cliff! Unlike a traditional caster that relies on spell slots, the Ardent's power was more fluid, giving you tactical flexibility and allowing charisma to be at the central of your entire effectiveness. And depending on how you wanted to play, you could be in the front line, at a distance, or just supporting your allies from wherever they were. 5th edition and 5.5 edition have flirted with the ideas for psionics through their various subclasses, but they still haven't gone full hog like the Ardent and Scion. Full hog is probably not the right word to say it, but you kind of catch my drift. For players who wanted to feel like a psychic tactician and philosopher, the Ardent was the perfect representation of that. And I sincerely hope the recent Unearthed Arcanas are showing us that psionics are coming back and are going to be bigger and better than ever. And there you have it, I guess. Multiple D&D classes that time, additions, and design choices have mostly forgotten. And although some of these concepts have trickled their way into modern editions, the standalone versions were always better. The more the merrier. You can never have too much of anything. Give us as many options as possible. Give us back to 1st edition when there were 600 classes and you're like, I'm playing someone that is just a dragon, not a dragonborn, I'm a dragon. As we've gone through this trip down memory lane and nostalgiaville together now, it's kind of reminded me that D&D has always been about creativity, imagination, exploration, and making your character feel distinct. So if you're feeling inspired or looking for a homebrew project to bring into modern editions of D&D, why not bring one of these classes to your table if your GM's happy to let you try and piece them together and slot them into your game?